for example, Flushing Meadow Park. But it's really hard to talk about that without addressing an elephant in the room. And that is that a couple of weeks ago, the mayor announced the creation of this Flushing Meadow Park Alliance, which excluded representation from myself. I represent about half of the park. Excluded representation from Councilmember Koo, not to speak for him, but he represents a piece of the park, and certainly very many of his constituents use that park. As near as I can tell, there was no consideration given to the fact that there are existing organizations who are spending money in the park, the Flushing Meadows Conservancy and the Flushing Meadows Improvement Fund, which spends, I think, about $150,000 a year from the USTA's original commitment. And on top of all that, there are concerns that this structure, which is indefensible in terms of its allocation of representation, is somewhat of a back-end vehicle for a process of putting for-profit entities in the park, which people may have different views about the pros and cons of, but it's a process that, if it's built on this layer of unrepresentative structure, is very, very troublesome. So could you tell us, me, the other council members who represent the park, the areas around the park, the community boards, 8, 6, et cetera, who are disenfranchised by this decision, how we are supposed to be advocates for the park, how we're supposed to work for the Parks Department, and whether or not you will go back to the mayor and revisit this genuinely unrepresentative and inappropriate structure?
Well, as I said up front, you kind of wove that in very nicely. So let me address it this way. I think, as you know, both at the, well, let me first address the Parks Without Borders piece, and this is open to any community group that wants to address an edge of this park to make access better. I think we all know that Flushing Meadow Corona Park is one, like many parks, that struggles from access in terms of people finding their way in. It's separated by a lot of highways and thoroughfares. So from that respect, regardless of what group surrounds the park, we're open to suggestions from any one of those groups. I will take your recommendation back to the mayor. As you know, that there is a community advisory group, a board that is meeting this week that is going to represent all areas throughout the community and surrounding the park, as well as a member of that group that will also be on the board. So there will be representation. I'm assuming, like any community advisory board, those seats will rotate, and I'm sure they'll rotate on places around the park, so there will be representation on that board itself. But I will take your recommendation back to the mayor. But we're still very delighted about this Parks Without Borders approach, and Flushing Meadow Corona Park is a great candidate. I was just with Councilmember Crowley. We took a tour of Forest Park, and so we recognize the important need to really rethink access into our spaces for people to enjoy.
Councilman Koo, I'm going to,
Yeah,
we're going out of turn, but we're good. You're Councilman. You're welcome.
Yeah, I want to say something before the commissioner left. So, Councilmember said before, we all agree that safeguarding Flushing Meadow Park, Corona Park is a priority. And this oversight by a group that's dedicated solely the best interests of the park and the people who use it. I support an alliance for Flushing Meadow Corona Park because of this reason. But I also believe that the alliance should have representation from the council districts that surround the park, whose district will be directly impacted by the decisions made by the alliance. My district borders the park to the east, but you wouldn't know it by the uninviting entrances and general disarray of nearby park resources. Playing fields are underutilized because they tend to be bare earth, and pathways inside the park are in desperate need of replacement. An equitable alliance should have a community representation that actually draws from all sides of the community. Also, you should add to the calendar that I try to speak to the Parks Commissioner about a couple of things. The $500,000 that I allocated in 2015 for the Kisana Park bike track, also known as the velodrome. Apparently, the money was reallocated elsewhere. but we never said it was okay to reallocate. So we have been trying to call the commissioner, the Queens commissioner, but they never give back the answer to us. The second thing is the Murray Hill Playground. $1.1 million was put into the park in the last budget. Please make sure that you consult with us or the board president to make sure that a higher fence is built when you renovate it, because the school is next by and they need a security gate, a fence, because a lot of homeless people go into the playground. So those are the things I want to bring to you before you leave. No, then, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
We're gonna go this
On
way
this
just because
topic? On this particular topic,
on the alliance topic? Or
yeah, well, on the thing that was just raised by the two councilmen.
No, I do, I really want to spend our time to talk with Parks Without Borders. I will come back, as you know, anytime. I will sit down with any council member one-on-one, but we want to make sure that people came here for Parks Without Borders, that we're able to respond to those questions. And so, right now, we have 1,100 suggestions. The other boroughs are piling them in. We want to make sure that we have 8 options. We want to make sure we have one from every borough, and then we have 3 others. We want to make sure we have some great candidates from Queens, and so we want to make sure both the district managers and chairs that are here can ask the questions so they can go back to the community and spread the word how they need to start getting their recommendations in, because how many people select the same one again and again for that park puts you in the best position to get that, on average, $5 million for that park improvement.
All right, so we're gonna do Vinnie, Betty, and then Alvin. Alvin, sorry, we already said the order before. Vinnie, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm concerned about the everyday parks approach, because in my district, we have 3 different communities that have a problem with no fences or inadequate fencing around the playgrounds. So we have Rosemary's Playground by IS 93 in Ridgewood, where the parents are concerned that their little infants will be running out and have asked us to build fencing to contain, gates to contain the children. We had the same situation in Juniper Valley Park playground area, when they were building the playground, to make sure there's adequate separation between the kiddie playground and the adults or the others, so they're not intermingling with each other. I have a problem with the 70th Street Central Avenue playground in Glendale, where the gates are left open 24/7, and the vandals come in and graffiti the residential houses next door, or play basketball till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. For years, we had volunteers lock the gates, we had keys, and the locks were taken off and the parks left open. So there's this thing of security in the playgrounds and parks, and accessibility for everyone else. So Middle Village, the Middle Village Playground on 79th, that was a big drug den for years until we got it closed up at night and security. The opening the parks, you know, I'm not too much familiar with what's going on with Flushing Meadows, but we have Juniper Valley Park and Forest Park, and you're going to have police, a mountain unit in Forest Park to cover Highland Park and Forest Park, because Forest Park's jurisdiction covers the Highland Park Reservoir. We just spent tons of money on that reservoir, and which is not really accessible. We need it accessible, but we also need the security. So without the security component for the playgrounds or the large parks, you open them up and we're going back to the 60s, etc.
Number 1, crime in parks is going down. Parks with no gates, regardless. In our parks, crime has been going down. That's a trend that's been going on. So crime is going down in our parks. This is voluntary. If people have discomfort about the program, either to lower, eliminate, or open up the edge, we have thousands of choices, and there's no comfort level or public support, we won't proceed. In terms of safety, there's something called crime prevention through environmental design. This is CEPTAT. We met with NYPD. What helps a park is better visibility, more eyes on the street, good uses pushing out bad uses. And so part of this program is to remove those sight lines so you open it up. Those who like to do bad things don't like to be on stage and be seen. They prefer to be behind trees that have little canopies or shrubs that are very tall. This is opening it up so there's more eyes. We're looking at additional lighting. So the goal is to actually make it safer, and NYPD actually supports this approach, and we'll be working with them as well. So the goal is not only to better connect the community, but also make it safer. And all of the plans, both everyday projects and the ones that are being nominated, will go through the community board as they do today, so you have a chance to weigh in. So I'd have to say that the trend, depending on the neighborhood, is a bit changing, and we're seeing great results by improving the sight lines and visibility of our parks. But again, if there's a concern, we'll move on to another park.
So Betty Brown and Councilman Crowley's kindly yielded her moment to you.
Councilman, I'll yield.
No, but go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Okay. Does this program, which I agree with conceptually, include acquisition of additional parkland? When
No.
you speak of the 85%,
No, but if you went to one of the slides before, a lot of our parks, there's this dead concrete asphalt that's unused space that we want to reclaim into the park. So it's not acquisition, but it's now park adjacent spaces that are just dead space. Keep going back, keep going back. Back a few more,
so they need to be park adjacent
There it
spaces.
is. So here is a fence. All this right now is parkland, dead space.
Because the point I'm trying to make is that my ward is Ward 10, which is southwestern Queens. Virtually all of my parkland pretty much abuts the conduit corridor.
Right.
You know, where fencing is a necessity. But I have a large swath of my ward area north of Blackwood Boulevard, where there is essentially no parkland.
Right.
Right. Two parks, one at either end. You know, in order to acquire more parkland, it would need to have, we've identified over the years and in our budget requests, you know, our discussions with Commissioner Lewandowski, you know, whether or not there would be additional green streets. You know, would this program cover that? Could we identify, for example, street triangles which may be currently under the jurisdiction of DOT,
Right.
where this program would come into play?
We have a $3.8 billion 10-year capital plan. And within that program, there are a lot of different projects. This one is exclusively for park edges, entrances, and park adjacent spaces. So we can look to the other resources and future capital expenditures to address what you're getting at in terms of acquisition. But this program is specifically, it's just $50 million out of the $3.8 billion to start to address. And again, as we're doing them, it is very, very popular. And our website, like I said, is being overrun by suggestions all over the city.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Crowley, then Alvin Rashaviak.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioner. Thank you for coming out to my district and touring Forest Park. Vinnie Curie is the chairman of the community board that represents much of my district, and he did speak of a few parks. Perhaps the park that many people are most familiar with is Juniper Park. And why is that such a beautiful park? Is I believe there's no fences. Really, when you look on one side, you see the other, although circumference is greater than a mile in diameter. It's a beautiful park. The fences are only when you have the need for safety. Very small fences in the playground area, or higher fences where there's baseball area, or delineating what sections of the park are which.
Right.
But for the most part, it's very inviting. And when we see the other parks, they're more like concrete jungles, right? So like, if I want to just stroll around, I'm not going into that park. It is less inviting.
Right.
But the obstacle that we do have with a park like Forest Park is how big it is, right? So you don't have those sight lines of what you're talking about. And for much of the community I represent in Glendale, we don't have access to Forest Park because it's broken off by that interborough Jackie Robinson Grand Central Park,
Right.
which was awful design. It really wasn't thinking about the people who live in and around the park and how best to utilize them. So, you know, I want to make sure my community knows about what you're offering here. I just don't know that we have enough time. Here we are in December, your deadline's the end of February. How are we going to, other than just having you come to our local community board, in January
Right.
at best. How are we going to get your message out there? so
Well,
we can get-
the good news is, while there's 50 million for this capital project, it is now a new design approach we're now adopted with all of our projects. So, and it's relatively expensive. For some of these, it could be 10,000, 100,000. So when you look at a new park budget, it's very small. So it is now something we're looking at for all of our existing projects in the pipeline and any new ones coming in. We will have that conversation with the community, but this is now a new design approach that we're adopting for all of our projects where it makes sense. So that is something I'll offer to you going forward. But it seems like when this is over and we look at the thousands of comments, this will be a great resource about what New Yorkers are telling us about their parks. We do hear concerns we're concerned about safety. We are working with the Department of Homeless Services, NYPD. We know some of those points, but it'll help us educate about how we start planning for the future. In the Bronx, it takes them 4 hours every day for my staff to lock and unlock gates. They have the most locked gates of any borough, and rather than cleaning parks, they have to lock and unlock gates. There's another borough that now keeps the gates unlocked to experiment to see what happens, and nothing has happened. So times have changed, and we want to take it slow, work with NYPD and our park, but make sure that safety is absolutely important. But at the same time, what message are we sending when we have so many gates and layers? Sometimes you'll have 3 layers of gates in a park, that we want to make sure that the open space is open.
Marshavia?
Um,
Councilman Prudential? And Morris Bond.
Alvin Warshaback, Chair, Community Board 8. I want to commend you